Charlotte's Journey: Escaping Toxic Family Expectations to Reclaim Lives and Protect Your Future. Charlotte was born when her mother, Evelyn, was just 19 years old, a young girl who had just graduated from high school. Evelyn married Charlotte's father shortly after leaving school and had her a year later. They live in a small house, and although they are not economically abundant, Evelyn always pays attention to appearance. Charlotte used to look at her mother every morning with admiration. Evelyn has always been proud of her youth, especially when people mistake her for Charlotte's older sister. But behind those smiles were problems that Charlotte couldn't understand as a child. When Charlotte was 10, the family began to see noticeable changes. The quarrels between her parents took place more and more. Although her parents tried to hide it, a loud voice echoed through the thin walls that Charlotte couldn't help but hear. Eventually, one day, her father didn't come home again. Evelyn sat down next to Charlotte on the old sofa, where there was a wine stain she had tried to cover with a decorative pillow, and announced that they were going to divorce. "Why?" Charlotte asked, her voice low and full of fear. Evelyn just smiled sadly. "Sometimes adults can't live together anymore, baby," she replied. "But it's going to be fine. Just Mom and me. We'll get through it all." Those words seemed to comfort Charlotte, but reality quickly showed the opposite. Evelyn began taking Charlotte to Aunt Sarah's house regularly, citing, "I need some time to myself." Evenings at Aunt Sarah's house gradually became commonplace, as Evelyn spent time dating men she hoped would become Charlotte's new father. However, none of the relationships lasted. One of the most painful times was when Evelyn's boyfriend left shortly after finding out she had a baby. "I was going to tell him," Evelyn explained, tears welling up in her eyes, "but I just haven't found the right time." Those months made Charlotte grow up with a vague sense of responsibility in her mother's life. But everything changes when Evelyn meets Robert, a man who not only accepts Charlotte, but also gives her hope for a real family. The meeting with Robert marked a major turning point in Charlotte's life. From the first time they met, Robert had shown himself to be different. When Evelyn nervously confesses that she has a teenage daughter, Robert doesn't leave like the previous ones. Instead, he smiled warmly and struck up a conversation with Charlotte, making her feel welcome. "I've always wanted to see her," Robert said, his eyes full of sincerity. Just 6 months later, Evelyn and Robert were married in a small but cozy ceremony. Eventually, Charlotte felt she had a real family. Her happiness is further multiplied when Evelyn announces that she is about to have a new member. Emma was born a few months later, and a year later, Lucy was also born, making their family crowded and full of life. Robert was a devoted father to Emma and Lucy, always spending time caring for and playing with the two little girls. But for Charlotte, things weren't exactly perfect. Evelyn, now busy with her 2 young children, began to rely on Charlotte more. Every time Charlotte came home from college, Evelyn always had a plan. "Don't you mind taking care of the 2 of you? Mom and Robert need a date night. You know how hard it is for you 2 to take care of them." At first, Charlotte couldn't refuse. She loved Emma and Lucy, and being the eldest sister always made her feel responsible. But things are getting more and more overwhelming. Her home visits quickly turned into non-stop shifts of caring for the 2 children, making milk, changing diapers, and soothing endless tantrums. She had no time for friends or even rest. One evening, after putting Emma and Lucy to bed, Charlotte sat down with Evelyn and Robert. "I love you," she said, her voice trembling but determined, "but I can't continue to be a babysitter every time I come home." Robert nodded in agreement, but Evelyn didn't. "You're as selfish as your father," she said, the accusation hurting Charlotte. That's when Charlotte realized if she wanted to live her own life, she needed to set clear boundaries, even with her family. After a difficult conversation with Evelyn and Robert, Charlotte decides to limit her visits to the house regularly. Although she loved Emma and Lucy very much, she realized that she could not continue to work as a babysitter every weekend without affecting her studies and health. Evelyn was not happy with this decision. Scolding messages from her mother began to appear. "Emma and Lucy keep asking why you don't come back. It seems that family is no longer important to me." Charlotte was heartbroken, but she tried to stand her ground. She focused on her studies, successfully completed her coursework, and graduated from college with a degree in business administration. Soon after, she received a job in her hometown, a probationary management position with a low salary, but enough for her to rent a small apartment for herself. Charlotte hopes that with this independence, the relationship between her and Evelyn will improve. But then, one day, Evelyn called Charlotte in a sad tone. "Mom and Robert are divorced," she said, without giving any explanation. Charlotte tried to make sense, but Evelyn quickly moved on to another subject, asking her to look after Emma and Lucy for a day so she could handle some personal matters. Charlotte agreed, thinking that she needed time to rearrange her life after the breakup of her marriage. However, a day quickly becomes every weekend. Evelyn began taking Emma and Lucy to Charlotte's small apartment regularly, citing vague reasons such as, "I have an important appointment," or "I need some time of my own." Charlotte felt increasingly exhausted when she had to work 60 hours a week and spend her free time taking care of her 2 children. She wanted to refuse, but every time she looked into Emma or Lucy's hopeful eyes, she couldn't. Things got worse when Charlotte accidentally saw Evelyn's social media page. Photos at fancy restaurants, yoga studios, and parties left Charlotte stunned. Not only is Evelyn living the free life she wants, but she's erasing almost every trace of her 2 young children from her image, just like she did with Charlotte. History not only repeats itself, but also becomes more serious. Charlotte was increasingly exhausted as every weekend was turned into reluctant childcare sessions. Evelyn often brought Emma and Lucy to her small apartment, citing the fact that she needed to deal with important matters. But in fact, Evelyn is enjoying a free life, as photos on social media have revealed, from lavish dinners to lively parties. Charlotte couldn't ignore the fact that her mother was repeating what she had done to her, living for herself and letting her children run for themselves. One day, Charlotte decides to visit Evelyn's home without warning, bringing food and supplies for her girls. She did not expect that this visit would reveal a heartbreaking truth. When they entered the house, Emma and Lucy immediately rushed to hug her and pounced on the bags as if they had not eaten enough. Charlotte was worried, and when she opened the refrigerator, the emptiness inside stunned her. Only half a bottle of milk and a few condiments remained. The pantry is no better. Charlotte rushed straight into Evelyn's room where she was trying on a new dress. "What are you doing?" Charlotte shouted. "Why is there no food for you in the house?" Evelyn, unapologetic, just shrugged her shoulders. "You need to invest in your appearance. Alimony is not enough if you don't stay young to find a good man." Charlotte's anger reached its peak. "Are you spending all the money that should have been spent on you to beautify? This is not an investment. This is irresponsible." Evelyn tries to defuse the situation, promising that she will go grocery shopping the next day, but Charlotte doesn't believe it. "If you continue like this, I'll tell you everything," she warned. Evelyn turned pale, begging her to keep quiet, but Charlotte knew she couldn't continue to cover up. From that day on, Charlotte decided that she would not let Evelyn continue to neglect her responsibilities. She began to observe more closely, always ready to take action if Evelyn reoffended. And just a month later, the opportunity for Charlotte to protect Emma and Lucy came when Evelyn used a serious lie to cover up her selfishness. Just a month after discovering that the refrigerator was empty and confronting Evelyn about her irresponsibility, Charlotte was thrust into an unexpected situation again. Evelyn showed up at her apartment early in the morning, her face pale and her eyes worried. "Charlotte, I need your help. She had to be urgently hospitalized for emergency surgery. Can you look after Emma and Lucy for a few days?" she said, her voice pleading. Charlotte was immediately worried. "Are you okay? What kind of illness is so sudden?" Evelyn only vaguely replied, "The doctors found a serious problem. You have to go right away." Unable to refuse, Charlotte agreed, even though she had to use her unpaid days off to stay at home to take care of the 2 children. The first days of caring for Emma and Lucy were difficult. The 2 children became difficult to tell. Obviously, they also felt the tension around them. Charlotte barely had time to rest between soothing Emma's anger, stopping Lucy from messing up the apartment, and taking care of the meals for the 2 of them. Despite her tiredness, Charlotte managed to stay calm, believing that her mother was indeed going through a major event. However, the truth was soon exposed. One afternoon, Charlotte receives a call from her best friend, Kelly, who lives near Evelyn's house. "Charlotte, your mother's house is throwing a party. The music was loud, and the cars were parked all over the road. Is there anything special?" Charlotte was stunned. "Impossible. My mother said she was in the hospital." Suspicious, Charlotte checked Evelyn's friends' social networks and discovered a live stream from Janet, her mother's best friend. "Hello everyone. We're celebrating Sandra's engagement. What a great party." In the video, Evelyn appeared radiant in a new red dress, completely healthy, hugging and kissing her new fiancé. Charlotte felt blood rush to her brain. She lied to her to hold an engagement party, leaving the two children behind. Charlotte called Robert and told him everything. He immediately drove over to face Evelyn with Charlotte. When they arrived at the house, the lively party quickly fell silent. Evelyn was stunned when she saw them, but Charlotte didn't let her explain. "Did you leave them to have a party? This is a drop of water overflowing the glass." Robert, with obvious anger, declared, "Sandra, I'm going to apply for full custody. You need a father who puts them first." Evelyn had no excuses. The party ended, and it was also the beginning of a legal battle to protect Emma and Lucy. After Robert and Charlotte confronted Evelyn at the engagement party, things changed quickly. Robert keeps his promise, applying for custody of Emma and Lucy. The evidence that Charlotte provided, from lies to Evelyn's use of the benefits for personal purposes, made for a difficult case. In court, Evelyn's irresponsible behaviors were exposed. Robert's lawyer presented detailed bills, thousands of dollars for plastic surgery, clothing, and parties, but little for food or the two children's academic needs. Charlotte also stood up to testify, recounting the times Evelyn neglected Emma and Lucy, from leaving the refrigerator empty to lying about being hospitalized for a party. Throughout the trial, Evelyn sat motionless, trying to keep her composure, but her evasive gaze clearly showed that she knew she couldn't win. When the judge made the final ruling, Evelyn was stripped of custody. Robert gains full custody of Emma and Lucy, and Evelyn loses her alimony. She left the courtroom without saying a word to Charlotte or Robert. Charlotte looked at her mother, feeling both sad and relieved. It wasn't the outcome she wanted, but she knew it was for the best of her children. From that day, Emma and Lucy's lives changed dramatically. Robert moved back into the family's old home, turning it into a warm and loving space for the two little girls. Charlotte visited often, but this time not to be a reluctant nanny. Instead, she enjoys quality time with the children, reading, playing games, and attending events at their school. Charlotte also finds balance in her own life. She focused on her career, got a promotion, and began to build a healthy relationship with a man who really respected her. Every time she saw Emma and Lucy laughing happily, Charlotte knew that what she had done was right. And Evelyn, through the rumors, knew that she was living with a friend, far from the glory she had once longed for. Charlotte no longer bothered by Evelyn's critical posts on social media. For her, the most important thing now is to protect them and build a better future for herself. After the court decided to strip Evelyn of custody and give Robert full control, things gradually became more stable. Evelyn left Emma and Lucy's lives without looking back, and Charlotte was finally relieved. Although she knew that this decision was the right one, she still couldn't help but feel a little heartbroken when she thought about her mother. But now, Charlotte's biggest concern is making sure her two little sisters live in a loving and stable environment. Robert quickly brought Emma and Lucy back to their old home, turning it into a warm place filled with laughter. The two girls are taken to dance and soccer classes, things Evelyn has never spent time or money doing. Robert not only provides materially, but also spends time caring about the feelings of his two children. He takes the girls to the park, watches movies, and always appears at school events. With help from Charlotte, Emma and Lucy begin to overcome the emotional trauma they have experienced. Charlotte visited Robert and the two of them frequently, but this time it was no longer to replace Evelyn's responsibilities. Instead, she enjoys spending time with her two younger sisters, reading to them, playing games, and listening to the innocent children's stories she cherishes. One evening, while helping Emma with her homework, She looked up and said, "Sister Charlotte, I wish you were our mother." That sentence made Charlotte both emotional and heartbroken, but it was also a motivation for her to continue to be a sister that the two of them could rely on. For her part, Charlotte finally finds her own life again. She received a promotion at the company, taking on a management role with a higher salary and more responsibilities. She also starts dating a nice man who not only brings laughter, but also respects her priorities, especially the care she has for Emma and Lucy. Evelyn still didn't give up blaming Charlotte. She posted a series of posts on social media, implying that Charlotte was a traitor who destroyed her life. But instead of feeling pain, Charlotte just glanced at those lines indifferently. She knew that Evelyn didn't realize her mistake, but it wasn't her problem anymore. Now, Charlotte has found balance in her life. She can both focus on her career and take time to take care of Emma and Lucy as a responsible older sister. Every time she saw their smiles, Charlotte knew that her sacrifices were not in vain. She not only protects the two of them, but also creates a brighter future for all three. For Charlotte, it was the biggest victory.